My name's Chris.
And I'm Kristie.
This is the Washing Up Podcast, and it's the first, ladies and gentlemen, of our chats with wonderful bakers.
Yes, you might find this person captivating.
Oh, that's a horrible pun. That's a horrible pun.
I'm going to try for a hat trick.
Oh, no. Something toque. Anyway, Nigel, how are we going?
Hello.
Are you feeling dirty yet?
I wasn't sure what to expect, but I should have expected a pun, of course.
He feels splattered. He feels
Yes.
splattered. So it is absolutely fantastic to have you on. Now, I've had a lot of people sort of messaging going, when is Nigel coming on? We've got a lot of for all the bakers, obviously, but I've had a lot of when is Nigel coming on, and I'm going to drop you a minute right now. Aaron from Australian Bake Off in particular going, when is Nigel coming on? You need to talk to Nigel.
So we will be setting up that friendship.
Yes, we will be.
We do take pride in
Cross-cultural baking and cross-country baking.
Cross-Pacific. Does the Pacific? Yeah, the Pacific Ocean touches Canada.
Yes.
Duh.
It touches everything.
Trans-Pacific relations.
So, but it is genuinely wonderful to get you on the show finally.
I'm so happy to be here. Hearing you both talk is such a highlight every week, and it's hard to make friends when you're an adult. So yeah, I'll take friendships. You set up these blind dates, and I'll take them.
Oh, we got you covered.
I think we need to set up a baking Tinder kind of thing, like called Doa.
Doa.
No, that might be different.
I don't know.
Yeah,
Don't give
Mixer.
I'm sure Mixer's already an audio
Oh.
thing, but I'm sure
Okay.
Mixer would be a good one. But let's not give the name away on the podcast. We want to fucking
Intending.
Bachelor.
we want the
sizzle.
rights. We want the
Oh,
rights.
right.
Elon
Sorry.
Musk will buy it and then ruin it. So anyway, it's really good to have you on. And I was drawn immediately to your baking by the fact that you opened with chicken and waffles in a frown. And these are the sorts of people that I feel like I need in my life.
He's another friend, first friend from our yet to be named baking
app.
friendship.
But my main thing with that is I'm a big fan of the savory bakes, as opposed to necessarily the ultra sweet ones, which Kristie always looks at me with disdain for. But chicken and waffles in a frown, discuss.
Yeah. I guess the kind of weird thing is I didn't even know how controversial, quote unquote, it was going to be, or how not thought of. It just kind of came to my mind, and I ran with it. That's kind of just how my brain works. Like I get an idea and I run with it, and it didn't seem that weird to me. And then when I watched it back, I'm like, oh, it is kind of weird. Why? I didn't think handling raw poultry in the first signature was going to be such a big deal. But as I was pulling the chicken skin to put it in the oven in the first episode, I'm like, no one else has raw meat.
I'm looking around going, where's the raw beef? Where's the chicken?
Why isn't someone bringing in like a rack of ribs?
But I mean, Anne even mentioned it when she went, the raw chicken skin. She goes, that's not something the chicken skin's really great. That's not something I thought I'd say in the first bake of the series. But I mean, look, one of the reasons why I liked it so much is I think crispy chicken skin is deeply underrated.
Oh, 100%.
Everyone's about bacon and pork crackling, and rightly so in most cases. But really crispy chicken skin is a deeply underrated tool that you can use in the kitchen. I think it's brilliant.
Oh, I think like there is a buttery, unctuous quality to crispy chicken skin that is unrivaled. It feels like you're eating something you're not supposed to. It is, it's just great. It's very good.
And you're not gonna like break your teeth on it. Like some pork crackle, it can get a bit robust, but
it's structurally integral to the pig.
Oh yeah. You get a porchetta sometimes, right? And you don't know how hard that pork skin's going to be. And yeah, I feel you.
You don't want to shard yourself, but but it's also too because like you get the crunch and you're like, you feel like it's crackling, and then you bite and you go, that's really chicken. And it's that beautiful little surprise. But I just really liked the whole. And one of the things we've been drawn to a lot is thinking slightly outside of the box in terms of what the base brief is and how you look at that and how you go about that. And I think that's a really good example of it's not that wild of an idea, But just especially, I think for the first bake, a lot of people go, I'll be fairly,
the tone.
but a lot of people go, I think I'll be very safe in the first one because they just don't want to do something outlandish. Was that something that you thought of when you were planning? Because obviously, you know, the signature and the showstoppers, you've got to submit things ahead of time for those. Is that something you thought of with your first ones, or was it just, this is what I want to do?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I kind of came in being kind of unabashedly myself. I didn't want to do anything that didn't make me happy or inspire me. I definitely start with an idea or a memory or a nostalgic moment in my life and kind of work into the ingredients from there. And it can be a good thing or a bad thing. I mean, it's really exciting when you do chicken and waffles and it works out and it's a good bake. And then sometimes I get down that rabbit hole so quickly, not to jump ahead, but like the burnt toast bars in week 2.
Well, yeah,
it's such a great idea. I never thought of anything else. It's what I wanted to do from the beginning. And then I look around and I see my friends baking and I'm like, oh, I didn't even think about doing a frozen bar. I'm like, I thought for sure baked bar all the way, have to do this. And I'm like, oh, that was a mistake based on our time, obviously. So yeah, it can be a good thing or a bad thing. But yeah, it's just how I think about food.
And with your is there any kind of nostalgic memories that you have that you haven't like developed a bake yet for, that's kind of proving tricky? Like, you know, I don't know, chlorine in a pool. It's on a hot summer's day.
We make fun, but there is one that I've thought about for a very long time, and I never thought I'd be able to do it, but I'm actually working on it right now. It was going to be one of my bakes on the show, but I'm working on making a bake. I don't want to give away too much, but I'm working on a bake that tastes like old book smell, like library smell. When you start getting to that stuff, you start playing with, like, you don't want to kill people with toxicity of perhaps paper and ink and stuff like that. But I'm very excited to hopefully. I appreciate
the fact that you are so caring and generous. That one of your earliest thoughts is, well, you don't really want to kill people, like, you know, and not even definitely. It's like, I don't really want to, but if the bake requires it, then who am I to argue with the bake? The baking gods will be merciful, or they will take vengeance, but they will decide.
What a last meal, like, particularly for everyone who's like a massive reader who does appreciate like the old book smell. Like, that is the way to go. Okay, so I've just come from a palliative care conference, right? And we have been talking about voluntary assisted dying. And I'm now thinking, how fucking good would that be if you're, sorry, this is probably a touchy subject, but here I am just like thinking, like, that would be brilliant. Did you think that one of your bakes would possibly become someone's last meal?
I think in general, I never thought that any of my bakes would be a wave in the pool. And it's amazing when someone picks up on your bakes and is inspired by it, or thinks it's really cool, or it makes them think of something differently. That's something I didn't really expect, and has been really, really cool. But
can I just say, I really like Nigel for the fact that he took your question and made it sound normal.
Yeah, thank you. I've got voluntary assisted dying.
Absolutely.
You've gone, no, let's bring it back to skate.
Let's bring it back to any bake that people make. No, but the other thing that from that first sort of week, and we're not going to run through week by week, we're going to jump all over the place, but I do also want to mention that the photo that went sort of more viral, I think, from that episode 1 than anything else, was you cradling the bolo de rolo like it was a first bake. It won a lot of hearts. It won a lot of minds. Did you ever think that you'd sort of make it big cradling a Brazilian bake?
There's so much about bolo de rolo that I didn't think about going into 2022. Like many people, I didn't know what it was when the technical happened, or what it was supposed to look like, or what kind of dessert it was. But when I kept making it, it kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Not quite, I don't want to be controversial, not quite as large as Lauren's bolo de rolo, the jumbo de rolo. But yeah, when I picked it up and it was wrapped in the cloth, I'm like, I'm carrying a toddler. This is what it feels like to carry a child. So when I came home and remade it, I told my partner Kendra, I'm like, I have to cradle this bolo de rolo. I have to reinvent it.
I'm now thinking in high schools everywhere where they do the the sex education and the parental education, that they can mix it up with home economics. So to look after resources, so they can do the bolo de rolo
and then take it home and keep it safe.
Yeah.
It's the well. I mean, there are some places where they used to take fruit and stuff like that home as the child, and you got to keep it alive.
Egg.
An egg was one. Obviously they give them usually the fake babies with the monitors in them.
You can't eat those.
But I mean,
can't have a tasty treat at the end of it.
But here's the important point, right?
What?
So a bolo de Rolo, the benefit is, as they said themselves on the episode, the inside layer can be a bit cracked, but the outside layers have to be smooth. So if you take your bolo de Rolo child home
and you drop it
and it comes back with the crack in it and it's not just that middle layer, you clearly are not a fit parent.
I did grow attached to it, funny enough, going down this thing, because like you work so hard on it and then you finish it and they were like, oh, let's eat it. I'm like, oh, can we just leave it out?
What do we think? What did we think of the whole bolo de Rolo as the first technical? Because it's always interesting whatever they're going to give for the first technical, and watching everyone's faces going, it sounds like a roll. Okay, we've got that bit down.
Sounds like a bowl.
Yeah, but it
sounds like an Irish bowl.
Was anyone?
Bolo de Rolo.
Were you sort of prepared?
Rolo.
We are sort of prepared for like the size of what it was going to end up being. Because before I looked it up, I was thinking, oh yeah, Swiss roll, that sort of thing, maybe a different take on a Swiss roll. And then they showed one and I'm like, yeah, that's not quite a Swiss roll. It's a bit more intense.
It was like, because week one is such a whirlwind, obviously, right? The emotions are so high. Everyone's in the tent. It's like, and I'm a huge Bake Off fan. I've obviously watched all the seasons and that's why I love the show so much. And everyone has their own adventures and stories on Bake Off, and every season's different. But I was not expecting something perhaps as complex or unique as Bolo de Rolo for week one. And the whole time you just think you're doing something wrong. It felt wrong the entire time.
Was it because I thought it was really interesting because there's so many different elements. Obviously, that making that jam is sort of an underrated, tricky part of it, especially with the texture that you had to sort of break it all down to start with. It was very gum-like when you got the cubes to start with. But then also the how thin do you make the layers? I think because more traditional rolls and stuff like that, it's a slightly thicker layer, whereas it was ridiculously thin.
Yeah, and when I remade it at home, I realized I can't believe I even got a roll on the show, because like when I made it on the show, I overwhit my egg whites a little bit, so the mixture was a little bit, it didn't really homogenize properly, so it was a bit chunky when I did it, and they were kind of cake. It was like thin in some parts, so rolling it was difficult. I was like, I can't believe I even got something out of that. Whereas I made it at home, it was a lot more proper.
It's amazing what happens when you have a recipe and no time pressure, isn't it? Slight adjustments.
There's no pressure. What are you talking about, Chris? There's no pressure on
there's never been any pressure in there. They're lovely and wonderful, and no one is ever fearing any judgment from any of them at all.
Cool as a cucumber whole time.
So you mentioned you're a fan of Bake Off, as a lot of us are, because it's
really
bloody good show. Some people podcast about it. Some people go, you know what, I'm going to go and apply for it. So what was your journey to the pavilion or tent?
By the way, if I call it the tent, am I going to be electrically shocked at some point in this interview? Or do you prefer pavilion?
Give it away.
I won't give away the punishment, but yeah. It is cruel and unusual and might involve Crocodile Dundee.
I think go ahead, sir.
No, you go for it.
I think like most people, obviously baking is like such a huge part of my life, not to be cliche. Having a mother who did it professionally, I could not really avoid it. But like many people, I started with the British show. I was huge into food television growing up, like Food Network and all this stuff was such a huge part of that, and Oprah were kind of my entire television experience. Going to the British show, and then from there, when the Canadian show came out, it was like immediate, magnet to that version. And ever since, it wasn't until I think season 3 where I applied that I was like, why not? Like, let's just go for it, right? And then ever since, it's been.
And it's you sort of hit on something there too, in terms of when you're gravitating towards the Canadian version, and it's something we've mentioned a fair bit. Is there is a very clear. And I've actually been explaining this to some friends of mine recently who were like, they were watching the latest series of British. And my response was, yes, go watch Canadian. And they're like, what? I said, no, trust me, go watch Canadian. And they watch Canadian. They went, yeah, no, I'm watching Canadian now. And it's I think it's a very different tone of show. And I think more true to those earlier seasons of British is what you see with Canadian and Australian's very much the same. Australian and Canadian, I always argue, are like twins. They're the A and the B side of the same ethos around how you treat the bakes, how you treat the bakers, how you treat the show.
With love.
Yeah, it's that.
And bad puns.
Love and bad puns, and there's lots of both of those.
There's nothing really like it. That's why, like, when this whole process and you meet people and people talk about you being on the show, you either get it or you don't, right? Like, if you know the show, it's like, oh, this is so incredible, what an amazing opportunity. If you don't know it, you're like, oh, is it just some food show? I'm like, no, it's not some food show. Like, it's the most amazing thing that does everything the right way, and it's loving and great, and watch it. Okay.
And again, one of the things, and we've something we've gone back to a lot, is one of the things we always feel like with Bake Off that helps it is the fact that people aren't there competing for some big cash prize and fame and fortune. You look, realistically, you're competing for a cake plate that you could buy, and save yourself all of this hassle by just buying a cake plate
and a bunch of flowers
and a bunch of flowers and putting a decal on. But now you wouldn't get Alan and Anne giving it to you, and you'd never.
That's what you think.
And you, well, you might, and you wouldn't get to hear Bruno's, dulcet tones, judging your food. So I think
Kyla's giggle in the background.
Oh yeah, yeah. But I think it's just the tone of Canadian is something that has been very clear the entire run of the series. And, I think one of the things that's come through with your series especially is just that level of everyone getting along, everyone being in it, everyone just being so connected and ready to help at a moment's notice, which is just...
And not in the technical.
And not in the technical, which is very important.
I tried.
Yeah, no,
I was told, get back to your station.
Good.
Yes,
good, as it should be. You can, again, I'm all. It's a free for all in the signature. It's a free for all in the showstopper. You do you. The technical, no, that's you. But yeah, I think that ethos sort of carries itself over, and it's been really lovely to watch just the way that everyone in this series blends together. It just seems like a beautiful group of people to be in the same place at the same time.
It's so special to see that was captured. I know going into the season, of course, none of us know what to expect. Like, it's a dream come true for a lot of us. And it was so incredible. And we just felt like we became such fast friends, all of us. Like, obviously we all have the same passion and love baking, but we're very similar people, a lot of us. And we became so close. And it felt special when we're there, but you don't know if it's special because it's Bake Off or because it's special because it's us. And to now watch it back and see that that's coming through and that people are kind of getting how incredible this group of people is really cool, because it just felt like the universe put us all there at the right moment at the right time. And it's a pretty cool group of 9 people. I don't want to say I'm cool, but
we'll say it, Nigel. We think you're very cool. You wear cool, like you get away with wearing hats. I can't do that. You get away with Frisbee is cool. I don't give a fuck what the haters say.
There are haters?
There are haters, apparently, and they're just idiots.
Who would be anti-Frisbee?
People who don't like Bake Off. I think there's a
big correlation.
Yeah, if you did a Venn diagram of people who like Bake Off and people who like Frisbee, unlike most Venn diagrams where like the crossover is only small, I think it would be like 90%.
Just a circle?
Just a circle. It would just be a circle.
I exist in that niche. All my niche hobbies are in that part of the diagram.
Yes.
So love it or hate it.
Did you have a Frisbee bake planned?
It was definitely discussed. There was something disky I was going to do, I think for Bread Week originally.
You could have just thrown the Swedish tea ring.
I wanted something interactive where you could throw those little bread discs. But I kind of fell in love with the sandwich idea, the meta idea of it, and kind of went down that. And like I said earlier, sometimes when I get down that rabbit hole, I can't climb back out, for better or for worse.
It's incredibly, look, the burger was incredibly Andy Warhol. Like, it was very pop art. It was very sort of, I looked at it when you first did it. I looked at it and I thought Andy Warhol would be proud of that. That feels like the sort of thing that would be on display at a Warhol exhibit.
No, he'd have it for his birthday before. There'd have to be lines of special frosting across it, I'm sure, or around it, but
somewhere near it. But yeah, I mean, how do you get to a rabbit hole where you're like, I'm going to make a giant sandwich, I'm going to make a giant burger as my bread, and I'm going to do like jumbo tomatoes, for example? How does one get there?
I don't even know. Like in retrospect, sometimes I don't even know. It's like, is it a fever dream? Is it a real dream?
Channeling the muses, the bread muses.
Yeah, it just kind of comes to you, and then you're like, can I actually do that? Wait, why can't I do that? Why can't I make a bread look like bacon, smell like bacon, taste like bacon, but not have any bacon in it? Right? That was the whole idea of all the components, was none of it actually had the thing in it. I guess technically I put tomatoes in the tomato. But you know what I mean? Like kind of do all these things without the actual things. Yeah, I don't know.
I think it's one of the best.
I'm a weird guy.
I think it's one of the best bake-off sentences, though, that you hear, and a lot of bakers that go on bake-off. It's one of the things that I think unites a lot of them, where the phrase is, "Why can't I do that? You know what? Why can't I make that? That doesn't make any sense. Why that isn't a thing? How can I make it a thing?" And then it's the process that starts. And I think that's what I really appreciated about the burger, was just the idea of, you've clearly looked at it and gone, well, why not?
Any art movements that you were disappointed that you couldn't represent? The fauves, just like a lot of green shadow around.
I guess what's that called when you can't use art because of it being too recent? You can't do Mickey Mouse, obviously, or something like that. So
can't plagiarize.
Well, also because the Mouse Corporation will sue. But
yeah, exactly. See, I had a couple art or books that I really, really liked, but could not partake in because of legal reasons.
Yes. Because you could do graphic novels and stuff, for sure.
It's got to be it's got to be outside of the it's got to be outside of that copyright sphere. So, which is I mean, well, in hindsight, then
you could do caveman art, just like those caves in France with like people on bulls. And
in
stuff.
Hindsight, I'm just thinking through.
Oh no, that's Greece.
I'm just thinking through.
Minoans.
In hindsight, does that mean that Zoya's mother could technically sue her for making her sewing kit? Because it's far too recent, and surely she owns the copyright. So
no, because that was universal. Every mother would sue.
To be fair, we have said that Zoya is currently smuggling everything out of the house through Bake Off. That's how she's doing it.
She wouldn't get money back. She would just get her spoons and measuring cup.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, Zoya. Zoya, I'm just playing into the podcast.
don't back down now.
I don't think you're smuggling things.
Don't back down now. When we have Zoya on here, we're questioning that. Don't back down.
I'm backing down.
Stick to your principles.
And we're getting her siblings in.
We'll get them in.
And having an intervention.
Long conversation around the inheritance. Was there anyone, we'll sort of come back to some of the other bakes in a minute, but what bakes were in there where you sort of looked around at specific ones and just looked at it and went, oh, that's brilliant. I really like that bake.
I think two moments. So the first being the first showstopper of the show, I think was, I didn't really realize how in showstoppers you have your head down the entire time and you can't really see what's going on. And then when you finish, I mean, my showstopper, I broke down and had a moment because of my thing falling apart, and there were many tears shed. And I didn't know if it was going to work or if it was just going to be cake mush inside, right? But when you look up, that first time when I looked up in episode 1 showstopper and saw everybody's, I was like, oh my God. Holy shit.
Yeah, the quality in episode 1 was stupidly high.
Yeah, and like, but it was such a cool moment though, because it's not like, oh shit, I'm in trouble. It's like, oh my God, I'm so happy for everybody that they got to make their thing that I've heard so much about, or that they, it's such a special moment.
Conversion for everyone else's bakes, just taking joy in everyone else succeeding. Like it's just
it's such an incredible thing, and like it's very hard to single something out. But I will say, just from a visceral reaction, week 2 showstoppers, when I first looked over at Zoya's tower, the Rapunzel tower, just the sheer size and height of it. When I looked over, an audible gasp. Because again, you're not looking, and I was very focused on the dragon, and when I look up, I was like, oh my God.
You were very focused on the dragon and losing half of your skin.
Yes, exactly.
That's very much going to draw. But one of the things that we talk about a lot is the idea of that, series where people have to go home, not because they've done something horribly, but just
Right.
because the rules are someone goes home. And I think more than ever, you've seen that this year with the judging, where basically they've gone, look, someone just had to go. It's not the case of you did badly. Someone just had to go home. And I mean, you're talking about your week one showstopper. I mean, look, who hasn't tried to make a sushi roll and have it fall apart on them? Like everyone
I never thought of that, Chris, and that's actually very true.
Yeah, everyone who tries to make sushi rolls, like the first one you try to do, I was like, that didn't work. That's just rice mush. Let's try that one again. Roll it. No, that collapsed. No. So all you did was replicate the home chef's version of sushi, which is started to collapse a little bit. And you're like, yeah, that's what happens. This is sushi. I made it. Look. So
there was such a visceral moment in that bake of, I can't even explain it. I can't put it into words, but when you look at something, so I had I think it was 8 layers, and you spend a couple hours working on this, and I didn't dowel it because I had made it before and it had worked. And there's this moment where I hear Rosemary in front of me turn around and be like, "Are you going to put dowels in that?" And I was like, "No." I actually remember the tone at which I was like, "No, how dare you ask me that?" And then I realized I'd oversoaked my cakes. And as I crumb coat it and turn around, I see it start to go. And it's that moment where it's like, what am I going to do? The more dowels you put in, the more it tears apart.
Yeah.
And what do you do? What do you do? So I took 2 scrapers, went right in the middle and took half of it off. And
I like that idea, by the way, that it's Troublemaker Rosie, and you were not aware. And she goes, "You got to put dowels in that," and you went, "No, why would I?" Turned around and she just leant over and just went swish. She's a sneaky one. She's a sneaky one.
Saying how beautiful and positive the pavilion was.
And Rosie is positively happy and wonderful, and but also
a mischievous elf.
She's listened to us long enough. The mischievousness is going to carry on in some way, shape, or form. And I like that he turned around and she's like, and then we're back to what she was doing.
Wicked whimsy.
It's the whimsy. It's the whimsy of the pavilion. You are right.
It has 2 sides, the light and the dark.
Have you seen, by the way, we were talking about previous versions of Bake Off and other versions of Bake Off. Have you seen any of the Australian Bake Off? I always like asking the Canadian bakers because it's a very split. Some have, some haven't. And I was speaking to some Australian bakers the other day who said, and I quote them directly here, it's not fair that Canada has that much baking talent.
I have not. And I knew you were going to ask this question, and I feel very uncultured for not having watched it. But I know. And I'm going to blame not being able to find it or something. And you're going to tell me it's very easy to find, and I'm sure it is.
He's preempted, and that is the conversation we're going to have, and we'll send you the links.
Perfect. I will say, though, this is genuinely true. I have dug deeply, especially since listening to you guys, into people's social medias and Instagrams and YouTube, and watched clips and segments of people's bakes. And I have been floored by some of these amazingly talented people that have been on that show.
It's always good to, for us, it's one of the things we really like about doing this is it's that, as we mentioned before, that sort of crossover between, and you see it where they start sort of just that deep dive through that bake-off community that sort of, it extends beyond each series, and people sort of find each other's bakes. And it's one of the things we really like about this is just seeing that.
Yeah, we are the bake-off cupids, just bringing
people together across cultures with baking.
Now, we're all just a big family, right? I mean, it doesn't matter which bake-off or which season. I mean, I've learned over the past couple months, we're all just a big community, and it's so dang cool.
Can land in a bake-off, country and just have free board and room and board,
board and room, whatever you want to have.
Food and bakes.
So
board and bakes.
So Biscuit Week. I want to talk specifically about Biscuit Week because somebody had a very big Biscuit Week. So first of all, they did the beautiful mislead on the promo for Biscuit Week by showing you setting fire to your toast.
Yes.
Which was a beautiful mislead into that's actually what I wanted to do.
Was it tricky to set your toast
on fire?
It's actually hard to traditionally burn something if you want to. So I knew that was going to happen too. When I was burning it, I was telling everybody, I'm like, they're going to show it smoking and it's going to look like I burned something, and that's fine. I'll accept that. That's that's me.
I know
it's
how
not that far off.
Works.
I would burn something. Yeah. I think I would use a torch would be my first thought. I didn't want any residual taste of a torch, that kind of smoke. So yeah, just flattening the bread a little bit, broiling. But it takes a little bit longer than you want it to. Which is part of the reason why it took so long to get in the oven and why it didn't set. But yeah.
Look, you really just need a person like myself with ADHD to come in and do that for you, because I can burn shit like without any effort whatsoever. Essentially I could be a Cuisinart ADHD consultant. It's like the care providers, you can't, it's very difficult to have a machine that will do that work for you. So
you can do that.
I can do that work. You can't. Yeah.
They should have the ability. What you're saying is they should have the ability inside to ring you up as like a phone a friend.
Yeah. I'm essentially a kitchen mixer. Like I'm a stand mixer. But I'll just come and burn stuff for you.
You're a stand mixer who's going to come in and neglect the bake.
Yeah.
That's what you are.
Yeah.
I would like to use my lifeline, please.
Now look, we're leading into Biscuit Week. We'll ignore alpha hottos for a minute, because we've spent a lot of time talking about alpha hottos, because as we mentioned on the pod, they were the week 2's showstopper in Australian as well. Technical in Australian as well, but with a slightly different methodology in terms of you guys had the pressure cooker, the Australians had to do stovetop, so they only had to present 8 alpha hottos, whereas you had to present small armies.
A million.
Yes. But we're leading into, look.
And this is what I love about Canadian is like all sweet and light, and then the producers go, but the technical is out.
Whoa. But we're leading into Jarashi, the Eternal Cookie Dragon.
Yes.
I want to know about the campaign.
Yep.
Goodness. We will need a much longer phone call.
Oh, we got time.
highlights, and I just get so excited hearing about the fun stuff in people's campaigns.
So for anyone, by the way, who's not interested in tabletop or gaming or anything,
listen, because you bloody will be.
Learn, because we're also going to, after this, we're going to link this into the game that we're trying to develop with one of the Australian bakers on a bake-off experience. So let's go. The campaign.
Highlight.
So it was a really special bake to me. D&D is multiplayer tabletop role-playing games are such a very
D&D. We can say it.
We're not sponsored. We have no. If we're going to get sponsored by something, I am here for it. Pathfinder, come at us.
Yep.
It's fine.
Bring it.
Like White Wolf, I will take it. Just yeah. Anyway.
So I've been playing for over a decade, and I took a year off partway through my playing to write a campaign, and we've been playing for, I guess we had our 3-year anniversary this past October. And it was it's a huge celebration. We run quite wide. There's 8 of us, and we bring guest pieces in and out, and it's just like, especially during COVID, it's such a thing for someone to look forward to every week, like having that like every Wednesday thing, and we still do it over Zoom, and it's just the best. So to take a story, something you've created like that, and be able to show Canada and maybe the world, that is so wild. And I still can't, like, the fact that the name is actually in there, and that it's just kind of mind-blowing. It was obviously very special to 12 people. But that's kind of the angle I took on the whole show, was like, whoever I can bring joy in that way, and share that spotlight of people in my life and people who are important to me and things that are important to me. I know that's a very long-winded answer that had nothing to do with the actual content of my campaign, but
no, we're perfectly fine, because again, as we mentioned before, we've talked about, and we're going to have him. First of all, we actually realized that we've never actually had Aaron on the podcast. We never got to it.
Oh no,
so we're going to have Aaron on at some point.
We're very neglectful podcasters.
We are.
I could probably get him on for you guys. He's my bestie. We're like,
I talk to him all the time. So.
You've lost your best friend.
I know, he's now Nigel's.
Yeah.
But no, because we're developing, and I know he's mentioned it to you. I believe he's mentioned it to you. The development of a campaign based around a lot of the lore around Australian Bake Off and some of the stuff that we've created on the podcast involving Stately Beer Manor.
So our now former judge, who was also like, she's a legend in Australian like the food industry, like, or even just in general, like she is. Yeah, she's like a Martha Stewart, but better, like
significantly better,
like
and less
pays
jail
her taxes.
Time. Yeah, less jail time. And yeah, we've built this lore around her because it's legitimate, it's real. That she loves verjuice. She sells verjuice.
She makes verjuice.
And so we've got the verjuice fields, and then she's got a massive manor, and then there's
a verjuice river.
Yeah, there's a river of verjuice.
There are now dragons.
There's a frost and a fire dragon that look after the butter hoard. because she has a butter hoard in a cave.
And depending on the season of which kind of dragon you need to look after that butter.
You know, the frost dragon in summer to sort of cool it down, the fire dragon to make sure it doesn't freeze. You know, so there's a lot of lore there. And so we are working with him on developing this idea of a campaign that involves Stately Beer Manor and getting through it.
Hey, I'll roll dice for anything, and this sounds
and
awesome.
this is where I think there's a beautiful crossover to be had. I feel like this is something that could work quite well.
Did you look at that that Dickensian one? What was it? The friggin' I had a brain blank.
What's he staying as a guest?
Yes, the 5 weeks with Dickens. Tabletop game. Did you see that? No.
Oh yes, yes. Yeah. Like I said, I will roll dice for anything. So I mean, it's just committing to whatever you're.
That's what I'm quite keen to play. The 5 weeks with Dickens one.
Yeah.
So we mentioned that for people who haven't listened to that episode, just go back and listen to it.
But the fairy tale week. Yeah. That was
yes.
Cake week.
That was biscuits.
Biscuit.
So yeah, with the dragon. But we talked about the game, the tabletop game that involves the tabletop multiplayer game that involves a campaign around
Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
Charles Dickens never leaving your house.
So is there anything is there one highlight of a campaign with your dragon? What's the dragon's name again? I'm having brain blanks.
Jarashi the Eternal.
Jarashi the Eternal. Is there one strong memory that you could share with us?
Oh my gosh, that is like asking you to choose your favorite child. Oh gosh, we're gonna have a bunch of dead air here while I think.
You could just make dragon noises.
That's some dragon noise right there.
Dracarys.
I will say that I have gone. This will give you some insight into what kind of game master or dungeon master I am. We do a holiday special every year. So we take one Saturday where we do 2 sessions, one in the morning, and then we do a little break with an activity together, or some people nap, and then we'll have a night session where we, have a couple drinks and kind of close off before we do a winter break for 3 weeks. So I can not write for 3 weeks.
That'd be nice.
I had this idea when I started this campaign to get very involved in it. And when we did this holiday session for our first year, I started hiding things in people's backyards. So I would take scrolls and stuff and hide them in the snow in someone's backyard. I actually snuck something into someone's house once, or I would hide things in pictures that I'd put in the chat over the years, kind of thing. So then when we get to the holiday session, it'd be you find something, oh, what did I find? I'm go check your backyard. And we're Zoom calling. So they go run downstairs and find something. Yeah. Or it's hey, look in that picture from, 6 months ago. And in the picture, there's a codex or something, you know what I mean? So that's kind of the fun that I have with it. And those moments are my favorite, where you get to see that wonderment on people's faces.
So this holiday season, everyone's just going to get a biscuit dragon or their character in biscuit form. You've got time.
You've got plenty of time.
Who's to say I didn't put stuff on the show that might affect.
So relating to that though, so my question is, and I think it's I heard it on social, but I think it's a really interesting question to raise. If you were designing a campaign with those bakers, who's what role?
Oh gosh, you're going to put me on.
I'm completely going to. You're good at this too, Kristie. I'm putting you in there. So assign roles to the bakers.
Well, Zoya's the healer. She's she's a pediatrician.
Is she the healer? But she's also got this ability to stealthily steal things from her family.
She's a rogue.
We love you, Zoya.
Yeah, I think I could do this. Let me start by saying all classes are wonderful. So they're all great equally. It's just how you play them.
Oh, completely.
But who's the drunken bard?
Oh my goodness.
Sorry, I should really riff with this. Yeah.
No, it's a really good question. Oh God, guys, I don't know.
I know. We'll just put it out there and we'll come up with it, and we'll just.
I think it's really well. Actually, I feel like Rosie's more mischievous, but that's just because I poke and prod Rosie a lot.
I think she's the drunken bard.
No, the drunken bard's got to be John.
Oh, of course, duh.
Booze.
Okay. Yeah.
Who's the person providing the booze inside the pavilion?
John.
It's John.
Okay.
John has the still under his bench.
Okay, sorry. I'm just,
right, because this is
missing things.
This is something else, by the way.
Maybe it is just a party full of drunken bards and rogues.
Everyone's the drunken bard.
Let's be real. We're all just bards. Yeah, exactly.
It's a bake-off pub crawl.
Oh, that could be awesome. A drunken bard bake-off pub crawl.
Yeah, there we go.
I think that's a thing.
Mm-hmm.
No, I think there's definitely. I would still go with. Oh, actually, no, because the bard part. I mean, Andre's singing. I mean.
Yeah, but Rosie was singing too. I think I've already snagged it. There we go.
Rosie was also narrating her behavior around the entire pavilion.
I think, yeah, like underestimating like how much we're all like. People we're probably only about 2 or 3 classes. We're probably just all bards and clerics. And
Everyone's a bard. Everyone's a cleric.
Yeah.
People getting.
I was trying to write them down here as we talked. And I kept writing the same thing, and I'm like, wait, no, they can't all be clerics. They're all like...
Okay, I think so. A far easier one then. Don't worry about the bakers. Alan, Anne, Kyla, Bruno.
That's way harder, Chris.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
I don't think it's way harder.
It is actually.
No.
Okay.
I don't think it's way harder at all. I think they're very distinct.
Yeah.
And I think so.
Anne's totally a barbarian. Like, she's just gonna fucking come in,
storm through everything,
smash it down with comedy.
Definitely.
No, Nigel's looking at me going, no, Kristie.
Alan's a shit disruptor. So
that just got me thinking here. That's why I'm glad I'm just sitting here thinking, running through everything for all of them.
Anne would be the barbarian because she would just push through everybody. Doesn't care who it is, just bang, get out of my way. Alan is a shit disruptor. So he likes stirring that up and like sort of poking and getting out of the way and watching the chaos unfold.
Mm-hmm.
I've listened to his NBA podcast. That's what he does.
It's very good. Go listen.
It's very good. I was watching it live stream the other day. By the way, go check it out. And then he went outside Jurassic Park, which is the Raptors play, and he was asking everyone who their most hated player in the league was and why. And it was beautiful. This beautiful bit of shit. And everyone's going, LeBron. I'm like, no, the correct answer is Kyrie Irving, but not for anything on court. But that's the correct answer though. But I think then the hard one is probably where to classify Bruno. I think Bruno's the hardest to classify out of the 4 because he's so multifaceted, and he fits in so many different areas. Although you do feel like he's sort of the wiser. I've seen some shit. I can give you really good advice type.
He's like a grizzled. Not a grizzled, because he's not grizzled. He's a Gandalf, kind of, but with butter. He's butter.
I think why this is so difficult. Butter
we'll talk butter in a second. Get through this, and then we'll come back to butter because we've got to.
I think why we're having a little bit of trouble with this. I think there's a lot of multi-classing going on here. I think there's some people who are dipping into a couple things here.
So let's
put in a pin. And
let's put a pin on that, and let's move back to something that's not at all going to sort of jeopardize you in any way, shape, or form with people connected to the baking show. Your views on butter. Now, I watched that hot takes video. Is it wise going into Canadian Bake Off to suggest that, maybe butter's not that important, given Bruno is who he is?
I watched that video, and the whole time I'm like, I know what I said, and I have to live with it now. As I was listening to my friend's hot takes, I'm like, it's coming. Here it comes. And then it came up and I was like, yep, that's what I said.
I was listening to it and I'm like, yeah, I can see that one. I can see that one too. That one's wrong, but that one's right. And then they got to you and you went, the butter comment, and I went, that's why he left when he left.
Was it weird they wrote on a clipboard after I said that? No. No, to be fair, I stand by my words.
Okay.
I will not back down from this one. I love butter. It is in my username. I obviously love butter. I think it's very important in a lot of things. But I do think it's a little overrated in that there are so many alternative fats that you can use in baking. It is very Eurocentric. There's lots of places in the world that don't have butter and don't use butter. plus, I won't get too into it, but I think there's like but it's very expensive.
Yes.
So like I really care about inclusivity in baking and the ability for people to just bake because they want to, and that shouldn't start at $6.50 here in Canada. So like I know people are snobby about margarine, but margarine works, shortening works, lard works, whatever you can use to bake. And I'm not trying to take a funny thing and take a stance on it, but that's why I said what I said. That being said, it was very foolish.
But it's look, one of the things that you said there, or a couple of things you said there are really sort of, I think, important, and also a difference when we talk about the way that Canadian and to some extent Australian works differently from British is the Eurocentric view of butter, which like butter's fantastic. No one's ever going to say butter's not fantastic, especially after in Australian when they did a free from week and did a free from butter when a butter producer was the major sponsor, and the week after all they said in the challenges, every challenge was how good's butter, but almost as a make good. But I think you're right when you sort of point out that it's a very Eurocentric thing to say that all of the fats begin and end with butter, whereas around the world that's not the case. That's not what, and we've seen a lot of what people would call unusual fats being used in bakes. Avocados come up a lot as being something that gets used and you see it more and more now in bake-off versions. You see people using the more non-traditional style fats in their baking to replicate what butter does, but also a lot of the time it's just because it's more close to what that culture would use and making it more culturally appropriate in the form of baking that they're doing.
Yeah, of course, whatever's available. And I mean, a lot of the time it tastes better. Like, there are obviously some bakes that do not work unless you have the properties that butter have.
Yes.
Laminating, I'm sure it's all possible, but laminating and stuff like that is very difficult without that kind of stuff. But coconut, lard, ghee, you can go down the list of all the things that are super great in that.
But they're also, as you said, they're also significantly cheaper.
Yes, yeah.
And again, one of the things that's often a gateway for people to start baking is that cost element of some of the, it's the technique thing where people are like, it's a pure science and it must be absolutely perfect because it's baking, it's not cooking, which is in some cases, it's very much that. But in most cases, no, it's not. But also that window of the cost of ingredients and people, well, you need the best of this and the best of, no, you don't.
If you look back, if we look back, there's that great TikToker, what's his face, who does all the kind of strange bakes from.
I bet Dylan Hollis, my favorite.
But a lot of it is Depression era kind of baking of what was available and how to make something taste. And look, there's a few things that you look at, you go, no, that would never taste good, even if I'm starving and there are no resources available. But there's some that you like, that makes perfect sense. And that would be such a treat to put together. I don't know.
No, but it's true. It's that idea of,
shortening and burnt toast and leftover
Christmas pudding. But I think
to make a birthday cake.
But I think in terms of like people see things like, and again, I reference, being Dylan Hollis on TikTok all the time because I absolutely love him and his, a pound cake from 1928. But I love all of that side of it. But the sort of the flip side of his stuff is it's actually quite important in terms of he uses things that are not used, that might be a bit cheaper, that were from, as I said, he does a lot of Depression era stuff, as you said.
Which look, as we're heading into an environmental apocalypse,
and an economic depression, all in one hit,
probably important to consider.
Probably a good idea.
I'm not saying that we talked about palliative care in disaster zones and what we can learn from it for the future during our conference, but we did. Sorry.
And part of the reason it's so important to me, that viewpoint is like my mother was a professional baker. When people hear that, they immediately think she worked in a 3 Michelin star restaurant. No, my mother was a journeyman baker. She worked in box stores coming out of college, and then worked in independent bakeries here or there that were a mixture of some being very, very well renowned in the cities we're in, and some were just small little bake shops. And from that viewpoint, I was around bake sale baking a lot growing up. And I think that's just as important as, the finest baked stuff that we eat now. So I saw a lot of stuff that didn't use butter and a lot of stuff that
But it's that
maybe isn't put up in that category that people think about all the time.
Yeah, and it's also that non-Eurocentric way of viewing. Like again, we saw on last week's episode where Kristie made the chocolate bao, and as the ice cream sandwich, and when they were talking about all the bread and in a lot of cultures, bread and ice cream makes perfect sense. It's used all the time. That's what they use. So it's that breaking away from that that Eurocentric bubble, which is, again, not to harp on that point, but for me, the big difference between British and the other versions is that the other versions are quite happy to move away from the Eurocentric view and introduce people to a world of baking they've never seen before, or something that's, what people's culture and people's identity. And not just view the world through the prism of you must use this set of ingredients and it must come out this way. There's a different way to do it that's in a lot of cases more delicious.
Unless it's in the technical, then there's only one way to do it.
yeah. Then it must be butter.
although my hot take for Bake Off is there is always more than one way to do the technical. And you see it.
Ooh, that is a hot take.
You see it frequently. How often do you see someone in the technical screw up the methodology completely, go their own route on it, and then when the judging, they're in the top 3?
Well, look, I also have to say there's more than one way to do it, because when you get a recipe that says make it look like a rose, when it's obviously a fucking vulva.
I have no comment on this technical.
I was gonna say. I mean,
like, unless you're a big fan of Georgia O'Keeffe, and that's your art goes, where you see a flower.
Did you feel crushed to miss out on the joy that was that?
I'll tell you what. Obviously, a lot of emotions with going home when I got back to Winnipeg, and I was texting with my friends after episode 4, and I heard what it was. I was like, oh, well, that's not so bad.
Could have been worse. I could have been there for it. And
that's what I mean. It's not so bad to be home and not making that.
Well, speaking about burning your hands off, watching them in that episode, having to dunk those in the hot syrup, all I could think of was someone's losing fingertips. Like,
I felt very good that your like subcutaneous layers were going to be safe, that you weren't going to be like what's it called, burning your skin.
Some context, when I burnt my finger quite badly in week 2, going right into bread week with no mixer in a technical where you have to knead was not the right time to burn your finger.
Definitely not the right time to burn your finger. So just in general, in
skin
terms
integrity is important in baking.
It's vital. So just in terms of sort of being in that environment, and we talked a little bit about that before. How different was it from what because you said you've watched the show, you've been a fan of the show. Did that prepare you for what the whole experience was going to be like? And especially I like to think of the heat inside that pavilion, which is, stupid. And again, you managed to also avoid chocolate week and trying to make chocolate set in that. So well done.
Why, thank you.
Well, thank you for going home early. I avoided trying to set chocolate in a hot place, and ice cream. But yeah, how did it sort of compare to what you were anticipating from watching?
It was one of those things where I remember flying out to Toronto, and on the flight over, I'm like, I have no idea what this is going to be like. Like, in my head, you think you know what it's going to be like, and it's never what you think it's going to be like.
Well, you wouldn't be with the climate there either. Like, Canada's a big country.
Not from Winnipeg.
Homogenous.
Not from.
So I grew up in BC. I spent a lot of time in Ontario growing up for the summers. So like I have a good breadth of like how humid it was going to be. Wearing a hat perhaps was a mistake, especially when it's 45 degrees. But yeah, no, it's you can't imagine what it's going to be like. And then once you're there, just the show itself, the challenge itself, way hardest thing I've ever done, most emotional thing I've ever done. After week 1, I broke down in tears, not just because my cake fell apart, but because it built up so much, and it just, emotion pours out of you. And from that, you get such intense and special friendships, but you also get, these memories, and yeah, it's so much.
I just always anticipate that if I was in there when Bruno and Kyla came over to start judging stuff, even if they were ripping my stuff apart, I'd be smiling, going, "Yep, yes, yes. This is the worst thing we've ever eaten. Thank you, Bruno. I really appreciate that."
Half the time you don't hear the words. You're just like nodding, being like, "Yes, thank you, thank you."
You're like,
"It was garbage.
Like
Thank you."
That really sounds like Bruno. It's this beautiful moment. It sounds like him. So in terms of just sort of moving on and stuff like that, well, before we get to the last part of wrapping up, your background is geography. Now as a historian by nature, and they're often here in Australia paired in a sort of sparring match at school, with geography and history on either side. Now, I teach both, by the way. But how would you sell kids on doing geography or taking an interest in it?
I'm going to protect myself in a bubble here by saying that my grandfather had his degree in geography. So when I went to school, it was an easy choice.
Yep.
I just, we did a lot of road trips growing up. I always loved maps. I obsessed, growing up, didn't have a Game Boy, didn't have any, obviously no phones like nowadays and stuff. We had an atlas. I read the atlas and obsessed over it. So going into school, that was a natural draw. Obviously geography is more than maps. I ended up doing a lot more human geography than that. But it was just something that always kind of drew me to it. And when I had to pick a major, I was like, sure, that sounds like something I can do.
But it also prepares you for the world.
Your grandfather's like, that is my grandson.
But it also prepared you but it prepared him well for the world of D&D. Because his ability to work with maps of all descriptions.
I didn't even take cartography class in university, and I regret it greatly.
So I would have expected that you would have. We get passion for maps, all that sort of stuff. Like cartography, I missed that one.
Sometimes the class isn't when you need it to be.
No, you're like, that is first thing on a Friday morning. That can get fucked. Sorry.
Yeah, exactly. I'll take rocks for 200, Alex.
So just to sort of finish up, any sort of, you've already sort of hinted at one. Are there any sort of baking projects on the horizon that you're looking at, or any projects in general that you're looking at on the horizon?
Cartography.
Yeah, a baking map. No, I got some bakes I still want to work through from the show. It's very cathartic. It's very exciting to bake the things that you work so hard on that we've been making. And after that, I have a small list. Got a little list of things I want to do. I don't know. It's kind of like this weird place, kind of for the first time in a few months, where it's like the wide world of baking is open once again, and you can bake whatever you want. And what are you going to make? I've really enjoyed just kind of. I'm a huge. I cook all the time too, so doing stuff for sustenance is always great. But then now, because of the flair of the show, I sometimes just want to make something that's, me and fun and.
I'm looking forward to seeing your holiday bakes then. Like, this is going to be great.
Yeah, the sky's the limit.
Yeah.
It's definitely the limit. So thank you very much. Really appreciate having you on. I mean, people already know, but where can people find you?
Oh, at Butter.
Gotcha.
on Instagram.
Yes.
That's where I am mostly. Otherwise, just find me. I'll be out there. Just look for the purple tube.
Just bump into in the street.
Costco.
Yeah, Costco, apparently. He's got a residency at Costco coming up.
Giving out samples.
There's a residency at Costco. He'll really enjoy that. It's been an absolute pleasure, Nigel. Thank you.
Before we wrap up, I would be remiss not to say to thank you both. You both are so important to the Bake Off family. I know that both the bakers and fans of the show, you are a highlight to their weeks. It's so amazing to talk to you both in person. I just want to make sure that you guys both know that and that you're loved and that you make us all very, very happy. You're looking like you're going to cry. Please stop.
I know, I'm sorry.
We got all warm and fuzzy out of absolutely nowhere. This is wonderful. Again, I was told many times by people before we got onto this today that Nigel is the nicest person on the planet.
Coming from Canadians.
Rosie, I will reveal a little bit of background. Rosie rang me the other day specifically to say Nigel is the nicest person alive. So I just
that
have to
not be correct.
Yeah. So thank you very much, Nigel. Thank you everyone for listening, and we will catch you all later.